Hello, welcome and welcome back to my channel. This is Lily Loves Learning, and today I wanted to share one of the free resources if you've watched any of my other videos. This is one of the ones I've mentioned in a few of them for math, and it is called Eureka Math. There's also, if you've heard of Engage New York, this is that curriculum, and it follows, if you use Zearn or have heard about Zearn, this is what the curriculum is based on. And Zearn is like the online version. So I'm going to share with you how to get the curriculum and then what are some of the things that it includes in case you're looking for a free math curriculum that is very thorough and provides a lot of information for you as the teacher and for the student. So the website to get this information is on Great Minds. So it's greatminds.org. And then once you get to the website, if you go over to the resources tab at the top and scroll down to free materials, that is where you can find Eureka Math, as well as possibly some other areas that might be free for you as well. I'm specifically going to look at math, so I'm just going to sort that. And then there are different age groups for the Eureka Math. So there is a section for PK through 5. Then there are 6 through 8, and then 9 through 12. So this could be curriculum all the way up through high school. And it includes a lot of information that you can use. So you can pick and choose. You can do this as a full curriculum. There are a lot of options for you. So I'm going to specifically look at the PK through 5. And then if you click in there, it brings you to a page that covers all of those grades. There's a general overview of the curriculum. Then it has pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, and then grades 1 through 5. If you are looking for a specific area, you may want to expand these and look and see what's covered in each of the modules. Because if you're not using it as a full curriculum, you can also come in and get very specific areas of study in that math. And it may be that it may be in a different grade level than what you're looking at. So you can expand these though and get information on all of the different modules. So in order to get this information, you do have to sign up, put your email address in. And then under primary role, I usually pick parent or homeschooler, because also if you're a parent, if you're not a homeschooler and you just want to get some additional math for your student, or if maybe you want to get some learning for the summer, you can come in here as well. So once you sign in, I've already signed in. So you can then go to your grade level. So I'm going to look and just give you an overview of one. So for instance, this is grade 5. This is kind of what we are currently in for our math studies. And then it has, I don't use the release notes, but there's a materials list if needed. There's a pacing and preparation guide. So if you want to see overall what's the pacing like for this entire grade, that can be covered there. And then it'll break down the different modules. So there are 6 modules in this grade level, and then there are lessons within each of the modules. So this one has to do with a lot of fractions and decimals. So that seems to be what grade 5 is about. And then it breaks it down from there into place value, looking at different operations like addition and subtraction of fractions, multiplication and division of fractions and decimals, and then showing you volume and area, so getting into shapes and what you can do with that. And then it looks like at the end, there is some coordinate planes. So you might be looking at some graphing, and then what are some of the problems associated with that to solve. So I'm just going to pick one. So I'll open up module 1. And then in there, it breaks it down even further into a teacher edition. There is a student workbook and then additional student materials. So I'll kind of walk through each one and show you what's included in each of that. So the first thing is the teacher edition. So this is that grade 5 module 1. And you can see it's 286 pages. So it's very thorough, covers a lot of information. And then I'll scroll down to kind of that next section. So I mentioned before that, yes, there's only 6 modules, but within each of those modules, there are also subtopics. So for this specific one, there's A through F, and then it includes a mid-module assessment and an end-of-module assessment. So there's also testing involved. So if you're looking at having tests, if you need actual test grades for your verification, this can be really helpful because it's already included in the curriculum. And then, of course, it has answers. So you don't have to know them as the teacher. Those will be included in here as well. And then it breaks down how you as a teacher could teach this material. It gives you lots of information. It will even give you visuals when you get to certain topics and how you can visually show that, maybe on a whiteboard or something. And then there's some pacing. And then I'll go down to a specific module and we can walk through that. So there's a lot of information in this overview. So if you want to get an idea of how you can teach this information, that is covered in that section. So then you get down to the specific topic. So this is topic A. And then from there, there's objectives. Again, this is like the teacher's manual. And then you get into your lessons. And the lesson is broken down by different areas. So you may determine that you want to cover all of these. Maybe you only want to do certain areas, but it usually starts with like a fluency or like an intro type portion of the learning. And then it'll go into the problem itself and then the student practice. So it breaks it up by time. So if you also want to help guide this, but again, this is often used for an entire class. So it may be faster than what's represented, or it could be longer depending on your student. But this is representative for what the teacher in a classroom could get through in that 60 minutes. And then it tells you what's for that specific fluency. If you've watched any of my other videos, I mentioned sprints. So I use this curriculum for the sprints. We have done this as a full math curriculum, but we've also more recently used these for a lot of this fluency practice throughout. So there's a sprint, it says rename the units, and then decimal place value. And then once you get past that, then there's an application problem. So we want to apply this thought into a real life problem. So again, like I mentioned, it gives you a little example on the side. So this could help you in what does this visually look like for this application. And then the next one down is that concept development. So this is like the expanding on what this specific concept covers, walks through some problems. And this is like, I would say, where the majority of the time is spent on this curriculum. So there's a significant number of problems. And then there's a problem set. So this could be where you're providing that teaching. Then there's an actual problem set that the students will complete in that same setting. This curriculum also includes homework. So you can do the homework, you can choose to do it or not. It's usually very similar to what is in that problem set. So if you need more work in a certain area, or if you want to just verify that that information has sunk in after that teaching, then you can use that homework as well. And then there's a debrief. And so that's one lesson. And you can choose to do all areas, or maybe you just want to do this majority section of learning and then move into that problem set. And then I'm going to show you, like I mentioned, there's some, other things. So there's the assessments. So let's go down to that. So now we're in a mid-module assessment. So this would be covering that first half of the unit. So that's included in your teacher curriculum. So if you wanted to use these tests, those are available to you as well. And then the answers for these are included in the curriculum as well. Okay. And then at the very end, after you go through all of the units, there are the answer keys for the different problem sets and exit tickets or whatever else is covered in that specific lesson. So this would be lesson 3. These are the answer key for that. So you have that information as well. Okay. And then the second major portion of this curriculum is the student workbook. So the student workbook will have those problem sets. So we just looked at lesson 1 and walked through that for this unit. These are the pages. So this would be what you would be doing right after you teach the material. The student would then have this problem set to walk through. And then, as I mentioned, they oftentimes have a homework as well. So the homework would be right after that specific lesson that you had for the problem set. This is the lesson 1 homework. So you could have more problems if there's certain ones you want to test on or check in on. Or if you want to do your problem set one day during the day and you want to give them the homework either that night or the following day, that's available as well. And this will be very similar for the other lessons as well. So this would be lesson 2 problem set. And then following the lesson 2 problem set will be the lesson 2 homework. Okay. And then the very last thing I wanted to share with you is this additional student material. So this has those sprint and fluency resources, those that I mentioned I use. There's exit tickets. So this would be at the end of like a section or a topic. So before you get to that mid-module assessment, if you want to check in on one of those topics, then there are exit tickets as well so that you can check in for multiple lessons and see if they've retained that information or if there's any areas that you need to go back and work on additionally. So I'll just kind of show you what some of those look like. So in the sprint and fluency section, it's basically kind of like what it sounds like. It's a sprint. So you're working through a lot of problems in a short period of time. So this is not meant to take a very long time. You could also set it up to say, do all of these things, we'll time it, or you have 2 minutes, complete as many as you want. So that's up to you. If you follow the teacher's manual, it'll give you instructions on what they recommend. And then they'll also usually have like an A and a B, so you can see if there's any improvement. So if you want to check on that sprint and then do some practice and learning and checking in throughout the week, then maybe by the end of the week, you'll want to check in and see if there's been an improvement either in the number that were correct or in getting more done in the, same amount of time. So the sprints are very similar. I'll kind of scroll down. So these were, again, where I mentioned if you wanted to just use a portion of the curriculum, maybe this is a portion of the curriculum that you would want to use as well. And then there's the exit ticket packet. So here's for lesson 1, here's for lesson 2, and so on. So if you wanted to check, maybe you don't give them homework, but you want to check the next day to make sure that they retained all that information, you could have additional problems for each of those lessons in here as well. And then the same like we had in the teacher's manual, we had those mid-module assessments. In this grouping is where you would have the student copy of that. So this would be the student's mid-module assessment. And then farther down would have the end of the module assessment. And so that is all included in this curriculum options. So if you look at, the additional modules, you'll see that same layout. There's a teacher edition, a student workbook, and additional student materials. And it'll have that all the way down through to Module 6. And as I mentioned before, there are multiple grades. So if you were looking at higher up grades, they would have similar information as well. So you would still have your teacher edition, your student workbook, and then those additional student materials for that particular unit. And again, those contain exit tickets and assessments similarly to those younger grades. And again, this can go all the way up to the end of high school. So if you want to utilize it for early or later, this is a great curriculum that you can use across all ages. And it's great that it's offered for free. It was developed for the public schools, and then they offer it now for free for creating all of that curriculum. So, all right. Well, thank you for joining me. If you wouldn't mind, hit that thumbs up and subscribe, and we will go over a little bit more on some of our favorite resources that we have for homeschooling. And then I'm going to shortly be sharing a video on what our plans are for the last quarter of this school year before we get into our end of the year review. So if you will be joining me, let me know. And if you have any questions, leave them below and I will answer them as best I can. All right. Thank you. Talk to you later. Bye.